Welcome to Windows on the World, and I'm going to talk first of all tonight about the talks that we're giving in Glastonbury on the 16th of June, and we're going to be there all day, and we're going to have myself, Sandy Adams and Piers Corbyn, and Mr. Corbyn will be joining us a little bit later in the show with broadcasting from Windows Towers at a secret location somewhere in North London. And really, these talks that we're going to be doing on the 16th are a bit of a culmination of the talks that we've been doing up and down the country for the last couple of years, and we're trying to get more kind of cohesive about it. We actually did a talk with a lady called Sandy Adams, and she's based in Glastonbury, and it was myself and Piers Corbyn at the Sunrise Festival last year. And it was the Sunday night, and the festival was coming to a close, and what happened was that it started raining, and I thought, well, no one's going to be here, and we were very surprised to find the tent absolutely packed, and we had a great audience. And Sandy Adams did a talk all about Agenda 21, which fitted brilliantly with my talk on the bigger picture and the social engineering which leads into the Agenda 21, which is the Sustainable Development Plan, which is being implemented at a local level by globalists. You know that word, globalists, they like that word, globalists. Well, we can say with some certainty that this is a UN program. We've covered it on many shows. No, it's not a conspiracy theory. It is in some ways a conspiracy, because the average person in the street has no idea what it is, but they know it's happening. When you explain it, they go, oh yeah, that's happening here. Absolutely spot on. So we're going to be talking about that, and my talk in this particular venue on the 16th, which is the King Arthur pub in Glastonbury. You can see all the details of it at windowsontheworld.net. And what I've got to do first of all is make sure that people are listening. So I'm going to now sign into the chat, because as I say, we're doing this from a secret location tonight and we need to get into chat. So I want to make sure that people can sign in and start talking. So we'll go to live shows at Windows on the World, and we'll get people into chat. That's a great idea, because it's very important we do that. I just keep forgetting, you see, that I'm an admin on the chat. So hopefully I'll just put good evening in, and I'll see if that works. And yes, it's happened, so that's good. So I think that the chat's open, and yeah, our talks in Glastonbury on the 16th of June. And okay, all right then. Okay, so we've just got a message that we're not going out on Spreaker, which we should be. I think we should be going out on Spreaker. Yes, I think we are live. As I say, we are in Windows Towers at the moment, and we're just pulling this show together, because it's been a very busy day and I've got a lot to get through as well. I've got loads of stuff coming up from tonight's show. And yeah, the talk on the bigger picture, that's my talk. I've called it The Art of Living Beyond a Post-Truth World. And it opens a door to world events and how our reality is being constructed. The research is extensive, which is the extensive research of Windows on the World for the past, well, quite a few years now. And it covers what we are perceived to be within the system. Now, what we're perceived to be within the system is quite interesting, because it's not what we think. And when I started finding out about this years ago, I was very surprised to find out that we are actually, basically within the system, we are property. We are actually believed to be property. So that's a very big part of what's going on at the moment, with the assumptions that are made on the behalf of the population. And it's really about social engineering, which is getting ever more obvious through PR-based fake news narratives which are being fed to the unelected media. Now, without knowledge of this, there's no hope of gaining a true perspective of what's going on. This is the sort of thing we talk about every week. It's essential to know how, where, why your worldview is being constructed, and especially by whom. These questions are asked and answered on our shows, and if you go into our archive you will find absolutely fantastic stuff on there, because we've been actually, oh great, someone said the shop is open. Well, it is actually, it is a shop in a way. It's a shop front, because Windows on the World actually accepts donations. I've been doing this for many years, and I actually get a lot of people phoning me up now, and I do help them. And I always forget to say, well, if you like the service, throw a few pennies into the pot, because we do need it to keep going. No, seriously, we do actually, because I do a lot of travelling around, and I do like doing this, but we've been inundated over the past couple of weeks with people who are having problems, and we've reported on these problems over the past few years. The problems that have happened to people through the bigger agenda, the global agenda, the global local agenda, which is actually taking away people's rights on the back of assumptions, and we shouldn't really let that be happening. However, that's a big part of what's going on. But the agents of change are identified on our shows, and the agenda is carefully explained with prima facie evidence. Always like to get evidence in, and we've had much success over the years dealing with useful idiots. Have a look at some of our recent shows on that. Brilliant, actually, in the respect that a few weeks ago we brought down this Grime Busters website, where they started photographing people in Waltham Forest and accusing them of crimes, and saying that they had fines that they wanted to give them on hearsay from basically traffic wardens. Yes, we're talking about NSL, you know, they have to get their 10 a day parking tickets, that is. Well, they're also the litter and dog poo police, and they should be resisted at all costs, because it's not going to stop there. Everything's being privatised. We've got this new police force, actually, that was announced a few weeks ago, and basically it's a private security firm which is actually posing as a police force, and what their speciality is taking people to court over counterfeit goods. So they said, we've had all these successful prosecutions, but what they mean is they basically, this guy is part of a police operation which was looking at counterfeit goods. He's got his own company now, and they're saying that for £200 a month they can police your neighbourhood. Well, I'm sure they can, but they're private security, so anyone could do that. In fact, the Met Police weren't too happy about it. But this is the sort of thing that's happening. Everything is becoming privatised. And for instance, before we move on, that the British Transport Police, it was announced in 2015 that they would be able to basically go all over the place, outside the railways, not wearing uniforms. Same thing really, private police force. That's what British Transport Police are. People in the British Transport Police would disagree with that, but they are funded by the railway companies. They're not funded by central government. They're a private company, and you can see how we exposed that in one of our shows, British Transport Police Exposed, where they raided the wrong address and the wrong postcode, and they weren't in uniform either. And apart from raiding the wrong place in the wrong postcode and not wearing uniforms, well, they announced themselves as the British Transport Police. Well, many solutions are available for those who are competent and aware, and this information is shared through this show, and particularly the talks that we're going to be doing down in Glastonbury. And we've also got Sandy Adams on there, and I've just mentioned Sandy, but Sandy is very good on the global action plan being implemented now in your local area. Rampant globalism and global control is the aim of most large corporations nowadays. Since 2009, Sandy's interest in UN Agenda 21, now known as UN Agenda 2030, and its 17 Sustainable Development Goals. Have a look at those and have a look at what they're decoded as, because it's all, everything's provided to you as a benefit. We have to look at what a benefit is. Benefice is, that's interesting, isn't it? Take a look at what benefice is. And basically it's a new form of indulgence. You pay for your own slavery. Now, Sandy was finding out how this Agenda 2030, this sustainable plan, affected Somerset during the flooding of the levels in 2014. and she's been researching the origins of this global plan and has been doing talks on the subject in Somerset. UN Agenda 21 2030 Sustainable Development is the biggest threat to humanity and freedom as we know it, and that's coming from Sandy, not me. And I think the thing is with this sort of rhetoric is that it gets picked up by people going, oh, it's a conspiracy theory. I was reading something from The Guardian, you know, that thing that purports to be a newspaper where useful idiots write articles, usually virtue signalling clueless useful idiots. Sorry, I should have prefaced that one. But they were saying that there was this conspiracy theory about an Agenda 21 takeover of the world. It sounds a bit like the useful idiot from Waltham Forest, Clyde Loakes, cabinet member for the environment, who's actually imposing this stuff on the local community, whatever that is. And they now have realised that yes, it is Agenda 21, and he said, I don't subscribe to this theory that there's an Agenda 21 takeover of the world. So I sent him a challenge and some links that you should look at, which is the things that he's imposing. And no, it's not a conspiracy theory, but we have all these useful idiots, these councillors, over 100 of them in London are actually linked in with property developers now. So what we've been covering over the last couple of weeks is very important, because we've got this situation now where we've got these, basically we could say unelected officials, because that's in effect what they are. They have this kind of idea that we've elected them, but really these people are put there, they're useful idiots, they're of actually no use at all. And so Sandy, getting back to Sandy, will explain the origins of the UN, EU, and how Agenda 21 was born at the Earth Summit in Rio in 1992. And who came up with the plan, why, what it will mean for humanity, and how it links up with the Orwellian Smart Agenda 5G, what this means to everyone. So Sandy's got a new presentation on that, which she'll be presenting on the 16th at the King Arthur Pub in Glastonbury. We're going to be there all day from about 12 o'clock, and we're going to go right into the evening. We're going to have breaks, we're going to meet up, and we're going to be able to communicate with the people who come along. Very interesting today. I want to give a shout out, as they say on radio, to Adrian, who I met today up in Potter's Bar. We had a day out in Potter's Bar, the boot fair, and I was walking past a little stall there, and a chap came out and said, oh, Windows on the world. So it's getting out there. People all over the country are starting to listen, and I hope they're finding it interesting, because everything that we're talking about does affect you. This isn't not some kind of remote thing. This really is having a big effect on what's going on all over the country. And I'm just going to check chat to see. Yes, this looks like we're here. Yes, I think we're in chat now. That's yeah, there's a few people in already. That's good. Yeah, I was just looking at this actually, BBC News. I shouldn't laugh, but I mean, in the week where we've had this guy who got knocked off his bike when someone was trying to park and pulled out a knife which is with a blade about 10 inches long and started attacking the car. We are now into mindless zombie territory. There's people all over the place who seem to be on drugs, and some of them are armed. But this was from today's news on the BBC. A man was stabbed outside a police station amid a series of gun and knife attacks on the same night. The victim, thought to be in his 30s, was found near Ilford Police Station in East London shortly after 4 a.m. Scotland Yard said the building would remain closed during the initial investigation. Well, can anybody tell me if they've walked past a police station that wasn't closed recently? That's what stuck out for me with that one. And this again is it's actually from a local newspaper, and this is the Agenda 21 backlash going on here. A mystery arsonist has been praised as a hero after an ancient toll booth, which only charged drivers 12 pence, burnt down overnight. Townsfolk in Warburton, Trafford and Rixton in Warrington were over the moon to learn the hated Warburton Bridge toll booth had been destroyed in a blaze. Tailbacks caused by the bridge, which links the two villages, was so bad children had to do their homework in cars as they waited in horrendous queues. One woman said she had to give first aid to a man who had suffered a heart attack because the ambulance was held up in traffic, reports The Times. No one condones arson, said an eyewitness, but it's given us all a sense of relief because we don't have to contend with the traffic. So this is all part of the problem that's going on. Even going out today, you can see that traffic is being forced off these small side roads onto the main roads, and that's a huge problem because you've got gridlock on the main roads, and that's becoming more and more obvious. So all of this smart cities and smart agenda to get cars off the road is just going to create these massive traffic jams everywhere. We talk about this all the time. It's extremely important because what they're doing it on the back is pushing cycling, and they're getting these cyclist lobby groups to actually basically be very vociferous, and they're actually creating cycling lobby groups, and that's also a huge problem because it's happening all over the country. I get people writing to me about this stuff all the time, and it's a big part of what we talk about. Again, it's the Agenda 21 policies. So I think Mr. Corbyn's arrived. I'm just going to have a quick check to see that he's in the building, and we're going to carry on with some very, very latest and up-to-date news. Yes, so getting back to this, I think we've got a lot to get through tonight. Mr. Piers Corbyn is going to be joining us. I was actually going to talk about surveillance in Europe, but I think we should go a little bit closer to home first. We've got quite an interesting thing coming up here, and if we get through to our first item, Agenda 21 spreads its tentacles from governments to federal and local authorities and right down to community groups. Chapter 28 of Agenda 21 specifically calls for each community to formulate its own local Agenda 21. So, useful idiot cabinet member for the environment and all useful idiots all over London who are imposing this, just read that. Chapter 28 of Agenda 21 specifically calls for each community to formulate its own local Agenda 21. Quote, each local authority should enter into a dialogue with its citizens, local organisations and private enterprises to formulate a local Agenda 21 through consultation and consensus building. Oh, you know that word, consensus. You know what that means, don't you? No choice locally at all. That's what consensus is. We're going to create a consensus. What we're going to do, we're going to recruit the people in your local area who are absolutely on our side. They believe all the fake green agenda. They love cycling everywhere. They hate motorists because they don't want to travel, and they're going to be stuck in tiny apartments for the rest of their lives and genocided when they get their pensions, because we don't want to be paying them to sit around doing nothing, do we? That's the globalist agenda. So that's what people like Bill Gates, Richard Branson in his carbon war, this is something that I think's gone a bit flat because he's not made as much money out of it as he wanted to. I'm going to get onto that actually. It's quite an interesting one, but it's called the Carbon War Room. Can you get your head around this? It was started in 2009 by the Grillionaire Richard Branson. You know that guy, the billionaire philanthropist. It offers the myopic carbon dioxide scaremongering and has homepage menus for battles and tactics. It's interesting, isn't it, the way that they lay this all out. It's all military intelligence talk. It's about deployment. You know, they use deployment a lot, don't they? People getting deployed everywhere. You know, they're going to deploy things. They're going to deploy these agendas into your local neighbourhood. It's only fair to disclose the rules of engagement. It says here that these government forces have imposed on science, debate and truth. Absolutely correct. No question, the greatest abuse of science in the history of the world. I agree with that actually. And maybe I shouldn't be reading something out that I agree with, but why not? There's plenty out there that I don't agree with. In fact, I suppose it's about 99%. But the government has total control of the raw climate database. the vast majority of the funding for research and appointments to authority positions. This is very, very important. They control the narrative all the time. So people say 99% of scientists agree. Well, they don't actually. That was an absolutely flawed premise, and it was 99% of what they thought scientists should say. And it would be in agreement. Basically, if you look how they cherry pick the data on that one, it's absolutely ridiculous. And you get these people actually spouting it as though it's real. So, to counter this monopoly, independent scientists have only their informed intuitions, their courage and empirical reality. Reality, that's what they don't like, to oppose government-enforced dogma. Those who have placed themselves in charge of this rigged climate debate also place their assets into charitable foundations that pay these benefactors in tax-free director fees. That's why these people like Branson are into it, because they make more money. That's why Al Gore was into it. That's why he made his fantasy movies. You know, the ones about the end of the world, the scenarios that are going to happen, which have never happened and never could happen because they're out of Hollywood movies. An Inconvenient Truth. And then he did a follow-up to it. The first one had 15 major errors, and that's not my opinion, by the way. That's the opinion of the judge who looked through it. The government is currently controlled by this crime syndicate. It is indeed to support their short-term economic benefit and long-term total world domination goals. The links for conflict of interest between these government-enforced monopolies and the monopolists extend to controlled media and scientific society level of control. Stuff we talk about all day long. To speak out about this total monopolist and mind control invites being labelled as a conspiracy theorist. Oh, you know that, the conspiracy theorist one, that was invented to shut people up after the Warren Commission on the assassination of Kennedy. We're not going to allow conspiracy theories, are we? No, we're certainly not. The world's megacities are merging. Now this is interesting. This is the globalist stuff, the agenda here, which I've just been trawling out today. The world's megacities are merging to form vast mega regions. Now, councils in this country are partnering with other councils. We're going to get into this. It's very big, literally very big. And it's been going on for a long time. But now we're seeing it because guess what? They're all unaccountable. Has anybody found any accountability in their local authority? The only authority I've found to be accountable is when I actually pull them up on something that they've done where they could get sued. And that's about the only time you get anything back from these lot. Yeah, it says mega regions which may stretch hundreds of kilometres across countries and be home to more than 100 million people. This is the UN talking, according to the major UN report. The phenomenon of the so-called endless city could be one of the most significant developments and problems in the way people live and economies grow in the next 50 years, says UN Habitat. Now we have reported on this. Habitat is a conference that happens every 2 years. And we had some of the people who actually go to Habitat. They're usually dull academics and they can't actually command your attention. So they sit there making a few statements before these conferences and it's like watching paint dry. But what they're actually talking about is the demise of all your rights. And they're looking at the walls doing it, looking for something more interesting to talk about. That's the way it's presented. It's presented in such a dull and turgid way, people think this can't possibly be important. Yes, it says here, the Agency for Human Settlements, UN Habitat, do look that up. It identifies the trend of developing mega regions in its biannual State of World Cities report. That's the State of World Cities report. The largest of these, says the report, launched to date at the World Urban Forum in Rio de Janeiro a few years ago. The Hong Kong, Shenzhen, Jiangsu region in China, home to about 120 million people. So yes, communist China is the model here. And there are these big engineering firms in China, the big architecture firms, and you can see it's exactly what they're doing in London. Huge areas of tower blocks and high density housing. That's the way it works. The trend helped the world pass a tipping point in the past year with more than half the world's population now living in cities. There you go, from the horse's mouth. So, half the population of the world are now living in cities. What was the global action plan? To depopulate the countryside. So 50% of people would live in cities. So they've done it. It's now a reality. They're actually spouting that this has happened. Now 10-15 years ago that wasn't the case. So there you go. The great old UN going into the third world and helping people, setting up NGOs, controlling the narrative, empowering women, splitting up families, getting people fighting against each other, and then they come in as the peacekeepers. Aren't they brilliant? The UN said that urbanisation is now unstoppable. Well, it is, because no one's doing anything about it. Because these criminals, these people who are implementing this, are not being stopped. Have a look at your local area. See if there's any signs that there's any kickback against this. No, there's only change agents in the area, people who've moved in who are controlling the narrative. And every think tank and every NGO and community organiser type group and organisation is in on it. Yes, it's not conspiracy theory. There's nothing paranoid about this. This is fact. Just check it out. Nobody looks. It's all there. Anna Tibaiuka, outgoing director of UN Habitat, said just over half the world now lives in cities, but by 2050 over 70% of the world will be urban dwellers. Well, think about that. 70% of the world will be urban dwellers. By then, only 14% of people in rich countries will live outside cities, and 33% in poor countries. You can see their arseholes pucker when they hear the word liability. Well, we had a great show a couple of weeks ago. That was fantastic. Council spy programme backfires. And I keep rubbing their face in that one for a while. But the thing is that there's so much stuff that's happening every week. It's hard to keep up with it. I mean, this week I've had people on at me who are getting their houses stolen, literally stolen, through the administrative courts. I've got people approaching me with campaigns that we're going to put out, and there's a wealth of information coming through. So that's great. It means the word's getting out there. Let's carry on. The development of mega regions is regarded as generally positive, said the report's co-author Eduardo Lopez Moreno. Well, he probably lives in a gated community on a fat UN salary. The mega regions, rather than countries, are now driving wealth. Well, of course they're driving wealth, because they're driving people out of the countryside. You can't live in the countryside. So of course the cities are driving wealth, you useful idiot. Research shows that the world's largest 40 mega regions cover only a tiny fraction of the habitable surface of our planet and are home to fewer than 18% of the world's population, but account for 66% of all economic activity and about 85% of technological and scientific innovation. Yeah, okay, you mean a technocracy. Well, these are the sort of people who sound like paint drying, and you turn off and go, it surely can't be that important if they're talking about it. Well, it is important. They are talking about it, but they are just at the front of it. It's not really them. They're just technocrats. They're these people who will be replaced by artificial intelligence because they haven't got any. So yeah, this Carbon War Room, founded in 2009 by Richard Branson, the famous Grenadier who lives on his own island. Is he going to be urbanised? I don't think so. Can't see that happening unless he wants to pop into town. And a team of like-minded entrepreneurs. So Richard Branson's an entrepreneur, is he? Oh yeah, okay, look at his background. Wanting to speed up the adoption of market-based solutions to climate change. Now, Mr. Corbyn's just coming through. What do you think about market-based solutions to climate change from Mr. Branson? And entrepreneurs, and of course...
Well, Richard Branson is a subsidy entrepreneur. He specialises in thieving taxpayers' money handed to him from governments for so-called green agenda operations. There's quite a few of them around. They are super rich and they do not live what they preach. He preaches, well, carbon taxation and being thrifty on use of carbon-based fuels, and of course he runs an airline and talks about flying people to the moon and such nonsense. And also believes in people having to defy democracy and stay in the European Union, whereas he himself doesn't pay tax in Britain and lives in, well, either some island or in Switzerland or both. I'm not sure which.
I think that's probably a fairly accurate summation. But the thing is that, yes, we get it's this globalist agenda. And how come all of these rich billionaire philanthropists? I mean, well, this word billionaire philanthropists, it always makes me
like George
suspicious.
Soros, who funds thugs to beat up people he doesn't like.
Well, he's trying to keep us in the European
Union. But he's paying them to do it, so he must be a philanthropist. I mean, it's such bullshit. I think also noticed recently the Evening Standard, otherwise known as the Tory brainwashing daily in London, is trying to work people up into a lather to defy the Brexit vote. And I heard some guy on the tube today, and I did interrupt the conversation, interestingly. He was lecturing some Indian visitors, a mother, grandmother, granddaughter, that sort of thing, about the merits or the demerits of Brexit and why people from Czechoslovakia should be allowed to come and live in London. Well, you know, after Brexit, I'm sure people from Czechoslovakia can still come and live in London if they've got a reason to do so. But, you know, I just interrupt, and then he said, and people in the northwest and northeast of England who benefit most from the European Union voted against it. And I said, I just interrupted. I said, hang on. Industry in the north of England has been destroyed by the European Union. That's why they voted against, and the sooner we get out, the better. And he didn't quite know what to say. But I mean, see, that is the point. This idea of them benefiting from the European Union is nonsense, because it's like Richard Branson says, the system which gives so-called benefits is theft. We pay vast amounts of money to the European Union, then they give some back to parts of England which have been destroyed by their deindustrialisation policies, and tell people, aren't we nice? Well, it is just highway robbery. When the actual facts of what happened in the north of England are that people like Tata Steel were paid to take away the iron and steel industry and build it again in India, producing just as much, if not more, CO2. But we, taxpayers, paid for the destruction of industry in Britain, and then we're meant to be thankful for the European Union for doing this. Look, the idea that the EU is going to save us jobs is nonsense. The EU is costing jobs, has cost jobs, and will continue to cost jobs. And the sooner we leave, the better.
Well, there's this kind of perception, even amongst people of my age, that it's all about happy, clappy, let's all get on and let's visit each other. And when the Iron Curtain comes down and Brexit happens, we're not going to be able to do that. This is kind of strange attitude that people have got. I know.
Before the EU, I travelled all over Europe. I mean, some countries I needed a visa, some I didn't. But you just went into a place and got a visa, you know. It wasn't a big deal. I mean, and they're talking about the problems with a border in Northern Ireland. Well, because it might slow down traffic.
Yeah.
Well, as has been pointed out by somebody, look here, the M25 slows down traffic, but that doesn't close down London.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean London should exit whatever.
Speed humps close down
nonsense.
traffic.
It's complete nonsense.
Agenda 2030 closes down traffic. Yeah. Slows down traffic. We've been stuck in that today. But yes, the carbon war room. Have you ever heard of this?
No, I haven't. But I think that Richard Branson ought to be put in a sort of room 101 of his own, where all his worst fears can come true. I'm not sure what his worst fears are. I mean, he talks about a worst fear being more use of carbon, but he increases use of carbon himself. So I don't know where these people come from, other than making money by making use of any false narrative around and exacerbating it.
Well, so the carbon war room merged with the Rocky Mountain Institute. Now that's very vague. The Rocky Mountain Institute. Well, that could mean anything, couldn't it? It could be mountain climbing, it could be camping, it could be anything. But no, it's a US-based NGO dedicated to transforming global energy use to create a clean, prosperous and secure, means police state controlled, low carbon future. And together they work across all energy sectors to accelerate the energy transition and reduce carbon emissions.
Well, it is brainwashing. I was at the Merthyr Rising.
I was going to get onto that.
Oh, right, last weekend where I raised some of these things. But I think in answer to this sort of stuff, save the planet gibberish, people who understand should intervene in debates wherever they can. Just ask simple questions. I mean, like I did on the tube. I mean, you have to, in that case, about the European Union. But look, you see, these people talk about saving the planet, but let's just look at the actual policies they're actually implementing and what they do. Right now, we have the Drax power station in the northeast of England, which is burning wood pellets. These wood pellets come from the destruction of forests in North America, and they're loaded onto ships and brought over and burnt. So it's not green in the sense of saving wood or trees, it's destroying natural habitat. And what is produced is, because it's quite a low temperature, rather inefficient burning process with wood, which contains a lot of water, even when it's dried, the pollution that comes out is very nasty, small particles which are difficult to remove. More difficult to remove than if you have a coal-fired power station. So the consequence is that essentially you've got an increase in pollution equivalent to increasing the number of diesel cars in Britain by 25%. 25%. So for every 4 diesel cars you go past you, there's an extra one you can't see, which is put there, polluting you and polluting cyclists because of green policies. Now these are what I call fake green policies, but people like Branson love them because they involve large amounts of money flowing around, and the super rich get involved in those things, the super banks get involved with them, Wall Street get involved with them. So the Wall Street globalist corporations win through the green lie policy.
Yeah, but listen, man, Richard was a hippie. He lived on a canal boat, didn't he, man? He was kind of bohemian, wasn't he? Don't you think?
Kind of wanted, yeah. Well, actually, at those times, I kind of met him, man. You know what I mean?
Did you? Really, man? Did you meet him down in Maida Vale, man, when he had his boat, man?
I was squatting in Maida Hill, the other end of Maida Vale, 200 squatters. Richard Branson was trying to do what he called squats, but there was in inverted commas. He'd kind of pester a landlord and say, "Hey man, we want to use this, man. You let us use it, man." And so it was like licensed squats, you see. I mean, not necessarily bad, or you know what I mean, but just, he wasn't actually challenging.
He was trying to engage the community, even at that time, wasn't he?
Oh, he was, yeah.
You see, that's what he said, you see.
I was asked, would I care to join in this game?
Yeah.
And I said no. We were trying to take empty properties from the authorities and force them to use them.
That's so anti-establishment.
I didn't say we were against what he was doing. It's just that to pretend it was, people's this or that was just utter crap. It was just Richard Branson Inc. promoting Richard Branson Inc.
Let's get back to me again. Let's get back to Branson. Yeah. Anyway, it says to get back to the Greenionaire. It says together. Is Rocky Mountain Institute and the Carbon War Room engage businesses and communities and institutions and entrepreneurs to make a cost-effective shift from fossil fuels to renewables. Right, this is what I'm always talking about week in, week out. He engages businesses, co-opts people, communities, no such thing as a community, useful idiots that they can use, institutions, basically get the change agents in, community organisers take over everything. You've got your community hub, you've got everything being controlled locally. That's what he's talking about here. And entrepreneurs, social entrepreneurs, oh, those are the people that they put into these institutions, and they go, we want a zero carbon economy. Wait a minute, that means working for nothing, doesn't it? I'm sure it does, you know.
Yeah, well, zero carbon economies are nonsense. You see, actually, on a world scale now, when people don't know this, only 2% of world energy comes from what they call renewables, i.e. Wind power or solar power or that sort of stuff. Only 2%, right? The other 98% is normal stuff, mostly coal, but also oil. Now, the green people declare war on the oil and coal industry, but actually the oil and coal industry promote the green policies in order to up oil price, because it's a no-brainer, and I have said this before, because farmers who are being paid to burn food to save the planet, they're only going to sell maize at a high enough price to be fuel if they're paid enough, but that means that the interests of the oil companies have to be put paramount. The oil companies say they support green policies so long as there's a uniform price for carbon across the board. So that means the oil price has to be equal to the price, or bigger than, the price paid for maize when it's going to be turned into fuel, which is high. So that means the 98% share of the world market, they basically double profits on that. And they're losing 2%. Well, it's a complete no-brainer, a complete, absolute no-brainer for the oil companies to back the green lobby, the carbon light, 110%. And that's what they do. You read their websites, they're promoting. They don't mind being blamed for everything bad, because in the end, they're gaining. They're gaining hands down. And the public are brainwashed into believing this stuff. But just go to those websites.
Yes, and of course there's a whole, I suppose they call it a cabal of people who denying climate change, who put on these lectures that get banned from universities. And of course we've been banned from the green gathering. We must be fascists, we're anti-green, we don't like it, we're against all these people going there in their buggies and their bikes, and we're globalists, you see, we're carbon fiends, we want to take everything for ourselves, don't we? And that's why we were banned from the green gathering. Well, if you actually look at the arrogance, the sheer arrogance of those people, and the brainwashed self-interest that they displayed, then you know what the whole thing's about, because we were bringing the truth, or as our friend Niels would say, the sword of truth.
Oh, the sword of truth.
That's, you know.
Niels Axel Morner, you mean?
That's right, and we need to get Niels on again.
Expert on sea level.
Yes, because he's actually proved that no, sea levels aren't rising. The places where the land is sinking. No, that's a different issue. We have to get him on again, because we've this coastal depopulation thing that's going on, that they go on about in the New York Times all day long. What a load of nonsense! And then what they did is they actually. They set up these markers in New York Harbour on places where they're actually sustainable development is happening, right? So they're building tons and tons of apartment blocks, on top of each other. That's why it's slightly sinking, and it looks as though the sea's getting a little bit higher, and that's sustainable development actually causing the sea levels to rise. You know, it's unbelievable. But you have just come back from the Merthyr Rising, Merthyr Tydfil Festival. We'll take a bit of a rain check and talk about that. How did that go?
Well, it went very well. I was the first one on Saturday morning, and the organisers said there was much more people there than they expected. They'd come to hear what I had to say. And it was posed as a kind of debate. Well, it was a debate. I gave a presentation, 10 minutes or so, with slides, and then a guy from the other side gave a presentation, and then we had a discussion. But basically, people were largely welcoming of what I said, despite the nature of this gathering, where you wouldn't.
I think we should maybe explain it first of all, actually, what this was about. It was a debate that was set up between Piers Corbyn and a fella called Nick Pigeon. And it was about the pros and the cons of the climate change agenda. In other words, Nick Pigeon was saying that global warming or climate change, anthropological global warming or climate change is happening, and Piers was stating that, well, it's not because. So give us a bit of insight as to how the debate went.
Well, I explained the key thing is there's no evidence for CO2, especially man CO2, causing any change in climate, but the facts are that carbon dioxide levels are controlled by climate, in particular the sea. And explained, as I already explained to viewers who've seen my film on the mini ice age, I explained that there's 50 times more CO2 in the sea than in the air, so when you add some CO2 into the air, it just goes into the sea, and when you take it out of the air, it comes out of the sea, and the equilibrium level between the sea and the air depends on the temperature. So it's the temperature of the sea which rules the amount of CO2, and it's the sun which rules the sea. And I showed the graphs which showed that all this is true. Now, he was asked then, okay, well, what's your explanation for this? And he just said, oh, Piers Corbyn's wrong. I mean, he had no answers at all for anything, and quite frankly, it was
so he prepared well for it then?
Well, there's nothing, if you think about it, there's nothing they can prepare. What his then fallback was, he said, oh, well, I'm not a real scientist, I'm a social scientist, and I'm just interested in why people are going against the mainstream, the true mainstream, you see. And I don't think really that convinced anybody, because he was just saying he didn't know what he was talking about. But, you know, what I said got a lot of welcome, and it was a different feel from previous meetings in similar sort of leftish type events, because this was the Merthyr Rising Festival about the revolutionary red origins of socialism and what happened in Merthyr Tydfil years ago and so forth. So I think there is actually a turn of tide, and what has grabbed people is that there's so many of these false narratives around which are aimed at undermining well, anything progressive, or my brother, or undermining Brexit and so forth. And I said, look, the climate story is just another of them. It's to justify, for example, deindustrialisation of the north of England. It's to control, regiment and increase taxation and profits for globalist Wall Street type interests. And putting it in that framework, I think people generally did understand it pretty well.
Yes, one thing we probably should bring up about the Merthyr Rising Festival is that we need to address it, really, that there was this article that came out, a sad defender, Vanessa Beeley, to speak at union-backed festival, and on the back of a certain article, that talk by Vanessa Beeley, and I think Patrick Henningsen was there, they appeared to be pulled off of the schedule, and I was rather concerned about that. Did you get any reaction to that?
Yes, well, the main organiser of the setup resigned, you see, just before.
That's right, Ian
Yes. Jenkinson, yes, concerning a dispute about this. Now, I don't know the background, and I think it's not simple. Obviously, they were saying that that particular talk you mentioned was going to be too controversial. However, you see, they still had me on, which for them, many of them, I would also be logically too controversial. So I don't think it was as simple as just controversy. I don't know what was going on, but I did raise the issue of Ian in another debate they had about no platforming, i.e. should they or should they not ban certain types of speeches or debates. And I said in that, well, if we're talking here, we ought to at least find out about what happened to Ian. And one of the organisers stood up and said, well, there were some differences. He did resign, but it doesn't mean that all his work is not treated with the greatest respect, or words to that effect. So I don't think it's a simple matter, but I think we should, find out more, find out what happened to him and what Ian himself thinks about what's going on. Of course, see, my feeling on these things is a lot of debate that is deemed by controversial should be had. because
In actual fact,
Galileo was controversial.
Well, this is my whole point. Yeah,
he had to be listened to, but there were people there said no, we want to torture him and kill him. So that approach isn't right. Generally speaking, unless there's a very, very good reason, debate should be had.
Well, debate is essential, and we get these people talking about critical thinking. You can't have critical thinking if you haven't debated something.
No.
If you can't debate something, then you've got no critical thought, have you?
Exactly so.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on then. Well, or move back, because we had all that stuff at the beginning about, well, it's what we talk about every week really. We've talked about the talks that we're going to do, which is great, and we've talked about the carbon war room. I mean, let's just finish this one off, because they talk about critical thinking. Let's just see what he says here. Yes, the low carbon future, work across all energy sectors to accelerate the energy transition, reduce carbon emissions.
Working across all energy sectors.
Yes.
That means holding up oil price and other prices of energy across all energy sectors. So that the oil companies are fully on board.
Yeah.
Completely fully on board. They're not the enemy, they're the friends of these people.
Well, of course, it's all about artificial scarcity, so we have to pay more for everything. It says it's brought the Rocky Mountain Institute, which is partnered with Branson's, his cabinet war room, basically his carbon war room.
Well, they should have war on himself. I mean, what the hell? He's talking about getting people to the moon, which is on nonsense anyway. But the cost in getting into orbit is enough. Let alone.
They've never been to the moon, have they?
No. Well,
I don't believe they have.
That is a fair question you've raised there, Miss.
I was actually making a statement.
Windows.
But no,
from Windows Tower, we're raising questions about the moon.
Yeah, we're raising a few.
We're getting nearer to the moon by being high up here.
Well, that's right, we are. It's like, we got Trump towers, we've got Windows towers now. But no, ladies and gentlemen, we're not doing this from donations because we don't get any. So please, if you do love the show, please throw a few coins into the PayPal account. We don't usually ask for donations, but I've been especially stressed this week. I'm under a lot of pressure, Piers, because I've been helping people save their houses and stuff like that. But this is actually, it's not funny really, because when we started doing this, we explained how it was being done. It's still being done the same way, but with a veneer of legitimacy, which sometimes is there and sometimes isn't. But the thing is, I love this when they say, like, analytical rigour. So Richard Branson's applying analytical rigour to his carbon looting scam, while the CWR, the cabinet war rooms, the carbon war rooms, brought over 5 years of entrepreneurial action. Well, no, just lobbying for this nonsense together with RMIC.
I've never heard of him. I heard of that.
No, it's not. They've basically had a few little. They think victories here and there. They're talking about shipping mostly. We've cleaned up the shipping industry a bit here and there. But
going back to sailing boats, is that the answer?
But the thing is,
sailing boats, yes.
Yeah. But if he was really a true globalist and he was on the level of Soros or any of the big boys, then he'd have done a lot more by now to destroy our lives, wouldn't he?
He would, yeah. He would. He doesn't own any anti-fire light brigades, does he?
Well, we don't know because we only see the surface, you see. We only see the surface.
They're all owned by Soros, I think.
That's right. But, we're going to get into, in the second hour, the unaccountability of merged councils. Now, this is a huge thing. Before we go to the break, we're going to have a bit of a break. Is there anything else that you want to bring up about what's happened over the past week?
Well, there's various weather things I'd like to talk about, and there's specific little things about councils. But maybe with the councils is going in the second half, is it?
Well, we can talk about we actually talk about councils all the time.
We do. Well, I'll mention something about councils and repairs and so forth. Now, in areas where they want to do destruction on behalf and for and hand in glove with developers, they will run down the council housing, not do simple repairs, will even just leave overflows from loos dripping in order just to demoralise and trick people. And the net effect is, of course, when it comes to actual repairs, that people don't get repairs done. So what happens is you've got a little sort of marginal industry now of lawyers who pop along and say, oh yes, you've got a right to have your repair done from the council, so I'll work for you on a no success, no fee basis. And I'll involve an insurance company to make sure that if we can't do it, you don't lose, but it means you've got to pay insurance and so on. So the point is, there's a whole industry of people doing things to make councils do their job. Now look, this is insane. All we have to do is for councils to do their job. I mean, that's all we want. So what we need is, you know, Labour councils to stop pissing around and just do their job. And that should be the priority. And I hope in the future, if my brother becomes Prime Minister, they would make councils actually do their job instead of leaving a niche for just, well, more little brands of small highway robbery.
Well, yes, we do talk about this stuff all the time, but the idea of this is to take away accountability, or this merging of councils.
Of course. We want accountable councils to fulfil their tenancy agreements. That's what we want. We shouldn't have to go to outside lawyers to make them do that. We should have councillors who shout, if need be, down the ears of bureaucrats that they themselves pay to do their job. And they should not be hiving off repair works. They should have them in-house. So when repairs are done good or bad, you can check. If it's done by a third party and the third party disappears or buggers off or goes away or goes bankrupt, then of course you can't. There's no comeback. That's why you've got to have in-house work.
Well, this is it. I mean, the thing is, though, that the only way you seem to be able to make them accountable is to threaten them in some way, or make them liable for something that they think that they're going to get sued for, or they might get some negative publicity. And that's the thing, I suppose. Give them as much negative publicity as possible and see what sticks, because this is the Saul Alinsky method. Use it against them.
Yes. Well, that's right. I mean,
well, that's right.
There are a few good councillors around who will do their best, but a lot of them, of course, there's two types of councillors. One is those who, there's a list of problems that have to be done, they want the whole list solved. There's another group who say, there's a list of problems, okay, where's your problem? And they'll go through the list and they'll put their personal problems at the top of the list. Now, obviously, you know, that is fair enough to an extent, but the whole list of problems has to be tackled.
Of course it does. We're going to have a short break, actually, because it's 21:57, it says here, and we're going to get back in the second half with the unaccountability of merged councils, indeed, well, local councils, but this is a big thing.
And we're going to do some weather
literally.
as well.
We are. We're going to do that. We could do that 3/4 of the way through, you know.
Okay.
I mean,
fantastic.
But in the meantime, I'm going to play one of my old hits. It's called the Independent Office of Police Conduct Unfit for Purpose.
Join me, Mark Windows. Windows on the World live every Sunday 9 to 11 p.m. GMT. Check out our archive and programme stream at windowsontheworld.net. So the Independent Police Complaints Commission gets replaced by the Independent Office for Police Conduct. You've noted they've taken the word complaint out of there, and we'll get to that in a minute. But on a government website, it's stated that this new organisation could initiate its own investigations without relying on a force to record and refer a particular case for investigation. It could reopen cases it had closed where there was a compelling reason, such as new evidence. It would increase the IOPC's independence from the police by abolishing managed and supervised investigations. Now, this is incredibly funny because it doesn't do any of those things. I got in touch with the Independent Office for Police Conduct because I had complained to the Independent Police Complaints Commission, as it was last year, about Kent Police, basically saying that they had perverted the course of justice, amongst many other things. I'll give you the shows that link to that in a minute. But what's really incredibly funny about all this is that when you complain to the IPCC,
it would actually go to the professional standards department of the relevant police force. So it was up to the professional standards in the police force whether they actually investigated themselves. So they would have to consent to being investigated by themselves, which was the Independent Police Complaints Commission. And now they've got this new organisation, the Independent Office for Police Conduct, which is even more useless, because when I phoned them up and stated that I wanted to complain because the IPCC had not investigated my complaint, they said, well, all complaints have to go to the Professional Standards Department. I said, well, it's the Professional Standards Department and the legal services at Kent Police I'm complaining about. So how can the professional standards at Kent Police investigate themselves when they are entirely corrupt and indeed criminal? And they said, well, that's what you have to do. So in other words, they are of no use whatsoever. They have no purpose. The Independent Office for Police Conduct has no purpose. And I'll prove it with this phone call.
Just in terms of your call to us today, what was it that you wanted to know? Sorry, what was the information you needed?
Well, the information I need is, how can I raise a complaint against Kent Police when their gatekeeping makes it such that their lies stop the complaint getting to the IPCC?
Oh, right, okay. It is just the exact same process as all the Kent Police need to go to the Professional Standards Department.
Yeah, but you see, the thing is that the Professional Standards Department at Kent Police are not fit for purpose. They've consistently lied.
I do understand what you're saying, especially as you've just, explained the whole situation of what they responded to you in your initial complaint. But you need to understand that we oversee the police complaints process that's set in legislation.
Yes.
Now, if you don't agree with that legislation and you don't think they're fit for purpose, that's completely fine. You're entitled to believe that. But I can't advise you any differently than what is currently set in legislation, and that is a case of sending it to the Professional Standards Department.
I see. Well, what I'd like to report to you as a matter of public interest, and I'll report to your press office, is that Kent Police are burying evidence, perverting the course of justice, and they assaulted a witness. They've withheld witness evidence, and they've denied medication to a vulnerable person in custody. These are just some of the things that they have done. Now, how would I actually complain against a police force that is utterly corrupt, and their chief constable will not even speak to me? He gets a minion to write
I've just advised you how to complain about that. You still have to go through however you phrase the question, the answer will always be your complaint has to go to the Professional Standards Department.
Okay, so that's fine. I must say that I accept that you are not fit for purpose either, because if you can't investigate these criminals in the police, well, nobody can really, can they?
All right then, sir. Well, if there's nothing else I can assist you with today, we will have to leave it there.
Well, that's great. That's all on the public record now, that the IPCC or the IPOC, whatever you call yourselves, will not investigate the police. Thanks very much.
You're welcome. Take care. Bye-bye.
Watch out, there's a useful idiot about.
Windows on the World live every Sunday 9 to 11 p.m. GMT. Check out our archive and programme stream at windowsontheworld.net.
Here's a story about what happened down at my farm one day. I was baling hay and someone started a great big fire they did. Kick it! I'm a Devon farmer, a very angry farmer. I've been baling hay for most of the day. You know, that straw stuff. Then a fire started, a great big fire started. It's burnt my hay stacks down, it's ruined all my bloody hay. You know, that straw stuff. Yes, a fire started, a great big fire started. I'll catch that fire starter, that cheeky fire starter. I'll make him bloody pay for burning all my hay. I'll chase him with my pitchfork. I've got a great big pitchfork. He's frightened all my cows. They're hiding in my house. And when I catch that fire starter, I'm gonna make him bloody pay for burning all my hay. countryside, leaving my gates open, frightening my sheep, dropping lighted cigarettes in my fields, willing to leave my country folk to get on with our law-abiding business. Bloody arsonists, bloody fire starters. Get on the lot here.
Welcome back to Windows on the World. That was a comedy song. Do you remember comedy songs? They were great. I loved comedy songs. They sort of died out. So, where many years ago, it seems like many years ago now, I created that one. It's called Farmer Firestarter. I suppose it's in the great tradition of people like Benny Hill and all that sort of stuff, you know. But it had to be done. We actually used to perform that at gigs, and there's people used to really like that. Just dug it out the other day. Bit of a classic there. And we're going to be talking about, yes, the bigger picture of the unaccountability of merged councils. Mr. Corbyn is having some hummus and some very healthy crackers at Windows Towers. And I got this message actually from somebody a while ago, and it was about these councils joining up, and it stated that Blackburn with Darwin, Burnley, Pendle and Blackpool and a few other councils are to form Pennine Lancashire, and they're in partnership with Growth Lancashire Limited is the big corporate side of it. And this is what we find going on everywhere. Everything is being linked up. And yes, mega regions. We talked about mega regions. This is where it all links in, because mega regions are what is being created in this country. We have mega regions in, yes, all over the world through Habitat, through the UN Habitat Agenda 2030. Oh, it's a conspiracy theory. No, it's not. They have them every 2 years. Check out the Habitat conferences. So, yes, they're in partnership with Growth Lancashire Limited. That's this huge area that's joined up. Blackburn with Darwin, Burnley, Pendle, Blackpool, a few other councils it says here. You can look into that yourselves. Chairman for Growth Lancashire is Tim Webber, who is also MBE. Oh, never. Well, this is the thing, you see. This is what they do to useful idiots or people who are just going to die. They make them members or order of the British Empire. If you want to look at what MBEs are about, they link really into... You get invited to a lot of things after you've got an MBE or an OBE. Yes, and he's managing director of Barnfield Construction Limited. Okay, so that links in with what we've been saying in the first half. It says previously on the board of directors for Lancashire Economic Partnership. Oh, here we go. Also on the boards for Pendle Vision. This is this guy, the same one. Groundwork, Training 2000 Canal and Rivers Trust. Prior to that, was involved with business and the community. I wonder whose community that was. And on board for Groundwork Trust and LEP. He is also partnership with Rossendale Together Barnfield, which is another little conglomerate here. He has also been named as one of the families on the rich list for this area. Very busy man, and there's probably more I haven't come across yet. Councillor Miles Parkinson, Linburn's council leader and also a representative for Lancashire County Council, is a director of Barnfield and Hindburn Limited, Growth Lancashire Limited, NW Fire Control Limited, Globe Enterprises and the Prospects Foundation. He's also on the board of trustees for Accrington Stanley Community Trust, which I have been reading articles on because they have put forward an application for planning permission on the playing fields so they can build a big sports complex. That's right, yeah, so they build a sports complex and a gym, and probably there'll be some flats there to get rid of the playing field. Over 300 residents, including Councillor Pritchard, who is also a former mayor for Hindburn, turned up at a meeting in opposition for this development and signed a petition. But guess what? We were ignored because the plans have already gone through. It's called consensus. It's called Delphi technique. Look it up. Look up Delphi technique. Been talking about that one for years. That's how you control a group meeting. A decision hasn't been made by the planning committee yet. Isn't a conflict of interest that Miles is on this board and a council leader? No, nothing to see here. Please move on. Have been reading articles that Councillor Pritchard was running as an independent at some point as well. because he said that the Tory and Labour parties no longer stand for people. Planning permission was granted as well for the housing development to be built on the Lytham playing fields, which is near my daughter's school, blah 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 goes on. There's someone who was actually contacting me a while ago, but it ties into what we're going to be talking about. Councillor Pritchard voices concerns as we are already overpopulated with not enough services or school places as it is. This is the big thing about what they're doing, swamping the infrastructure. You've got to fight over a place for school, and you're going to have to walk, cycle or enjoy yourself to get there. Again, residents were ignored and building started a few weeks ago. Does this sound familiar, Mr Corbyn? Residents were ignored and building started a few weeks ago.
It does. It sounds very familiar. Where do I start? Highgate Estate, Aylesbury Estate, Alton Estate.
Well, let's bring that in now before we go into the mega regions.
Well, yeah. Mega regions, it's just a way of reducing accountability. See, they talk about localism and accountability, but when they talk about that, they mean the opposite. In fact, everything they say, they mean the opposite. When Richard Branson talks about saving the planet, he means destroying the planet. He means any game that suits him. Anyway, okay, tell me, what do you think about mega regions?
All this that I'm reporting is that a quick search on the internet will bring up how big this is, and it's getting bigger. And that's the important thing here, I think, is that part of the agenda that we talk about week in, week out, which affects everything you do and every person on the planet, is down to this. It's about remote authority and lack of accountability and no recourse locally, but the appearance of this word called community.
Yeah.
And we have community organisers, community consultations. Again, get the people on your side through a PR company, as we reported with Chris in Hertford several weeks ago. What they do is they bring in these people who are skilled at controlling the narrative. They get the useful idiots on board, they identify the narcissists, and they put them up as the community leaders or the voice of the community, and then they get to interact with, guess what, the stakeholders. You know those people. Yes, they chain you to the stake and then burn your rights. That's what stakeholders are.
They do indeed.
5 Buckinghamshire councils set to merge into one. 5 into one.
Yeah.
Government plans to press ahead with a bid to merge all 5 local authorities in Buckinghamshire into one have been welcomed by the county council leader, useful idiot, Councillor Martin Tett. Housing Minister Sajid Javid, you know, the one who stands with his legs apart in a very expensive suit, announced on Monday, March the 12th, this was a while ago, this year though, he was minded to proceed with plans to merge Buckinghamshire County Council and the district councils of Aylesbury Vale, Chiltern, High Wycombe and South Buckinghamshire into one unitary authority. Are we getting the message here? This is absolute remote authority, no recourse locally. Oh, but you voted for all those flats, didn't you? Didn't you go to the meeting? We did send it to you. Oh, well, we've got so big now, sometimes people don't pick up everything because, you know, we've got 5 counties now. In his statement, he said, I am satisfied that this new single council, it's 5 into 1, so it's become 1, and it's just one council now. It was one council before, so it's the same, can't you see? It's just the same, but bigger.
You always had one council.
It's bigger, yes, the One World Council.
Yes. Well, the effect of these things is to disempower people. I mean, right now there's stuff going around the whole of England in council meetings, sub-council meetings, tenants meetings about a European General Directive on information control and so forth. And what we're told is, this is a new rule, this has come from the European Union, it is about to be okayed by Parliament, and you've got to be ready. Now, most of what they say is stupid. Some of it may be useful, but it's all disempowering. And the way it comes across to people is it's another rule which is above us and above the immediate authority above us, i.e. our local council or our local ward council. They have no say in it. They're just here to implement, and we must obey. So these are called consultation meetings, but they're nothing of the sort. They're instruction meetings.
That's right.
And there is a legal backing. If you don't comply, you could be, or would be, and will be in trouble.
Let's see what the useful idiot Sajid Javid said. I am satisfied that this new single council, if established, we already know it's going to be, and obviously, you know, if, you know, the big word if, it means yes, it's going to be established. Yes, we knew that. Is likely to improve local government and service delivery in the county. Well, what they're going to do is make sure that nobody can complain. That's the first thing.
It is likely. Why can't you say it is going to? I mean, come on.
Well, because it has to be seen to be a democratic process, Piers. We can't just enforce tyranny on everyone without, you know...
It ought to be, if he's going to do it, it should be a dead cert, or you don't do it, right? My motto on these things, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. All the time, councils are so-called fixing things which are not broken and destroying life, communities, people, everything.
Yeah.
Like the Aylesbury estate, Haygate estate, and now they're trying to do it on the...
No, but he's saying it's generating savings, which means cuts to everything. So generating savings just means that more money goes to their pension pot, or wherever it does go, or through their corrupt third parties.
So I've come to you, Mark, to generate a saving. Now, can you give me your purse and I'm going to take it?
Well, yes.
Half your purse, that's generating a saving, right?
Absolutely, because it means that you can save because you don't spend as much because you've taken it off me.
Of course.
Yes, I understand where it's coming from. It makes perfect financial sense. Increasing financial resilience, which again means cuts to services.
Well, my
cuts
resilience
to
will go up
everything.
if you give me some money.
Well, this is what the whole thing's about, really. It's about protecting financial interests, Piers. Something you may not know anything about. So, facilitating, lovely. It's got the F word. It's got the F word, facilitating a more strategic and holistic approach to planning and housing. Well, strategic and holistic means, you bring in...
Cosmic, man. It's holistic.
It's holistic, man. Well, look, man, it's a festival. It's a festival, man. Chill out. What's the matter with you guys? Yeah? You've come down here today. You just all this you're doing.
What's them do festivals do?
You're making it a very distressing experience for everybody, and we come here to chill out, right? We've come here to chill out. We've got together. We all want to be sustainable. Everybody wants to be sustainable, don't we? Now, a more strategic and holistic approach just means basically scientific social engineering to planning and housing challenges. Oh, we've got housing challenges and sustaining
because they're
good
destroying it. That's why they're destroying.
Oh, is that why?
That is the challenge. That is why.
I didn't know that. I'm also satisfied. This is Sajid.
Developers cause the housing crisis. They're causing the housing crisis. There's not any solution to it.
Well, you have to create the problem before you can bring in the solution, Piers. I mean, come on.
Right.
I mean,
carbon problem. Yes, I forgot the carbon problem.
And the common problem. The common problem is that we are hugely overpopulated because 50% of people now live in towns. This is the thing, Piers, that this is the sort of thing they're going to spout. They're going to spout the things that come out of these conferences, the ones we talk about, the ones that are meant to be conspiracy theories. I'm also satisfied that across
there's no
Buckinghamshire...
conspiracy, they're just working in their own interests together. I mean,
see what the MP says.
See what the MP says. And then we could talk about the raft of Wall Street globalist ideologies that they're promoting.
I'm also satisfied that across Buckinghamshire as a whole there is a good deal of local support for this new council. Wait a minute, it's not a new council, right? It's 5 councils that are going to be put into one. So nobody's voted anybody in here, have they? So it's not a new council.
No.
So it's not a new council. It's just basically a conglomerate that's come together. It's everything becoming Google. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, and that
Googleization.
Googleization.
Yeah.
Googleization.
Well, and to Yahoo.
Well, they're part of it, aren't they? They're part of the problem. They're not the solution, man.
No.
And that the area of the council represents a credible geograph. Geograph. Oh, it must. Maybe I left the Y out. Why?
Well, yeah, I think with all these things, you can see that the ruling circles have a sort of raft of ideology which hangs together, whereas we opposing forces, sort of progressive, leftish or not leftish, whatever, have different ideologies which the powers that be manipulate in order to divide us. But the big interests, the Wall Street globalists, have their fake news narratives which all hang together, and we have to break this, and it is a hard job. See, for example, European Union and United Nations are projected as happy, clappy, good things, and if you oppose those or anything they do, you're xenophobic or even racist or whatever, right? We have climate change which justifies deindustrialisation of the whole of North America and Northern Britain, right? You oppose that, you're a climate denier. And therefore associated with Holocaust deniers, and therefore you're potentially anti-Semitic. And you know, if you're that is really, that's not just bad, that's bad. Okay? If you oppose open borders because you see in your own eyes that very low paid people are coming in, not in trade unions, accepting low wages, reducing wages in Britain, you're called a racist. Well, hang on. The people that are bringing in and sending in low-paid workers themselves live in gated communities. So they don't care a damn about open borders, and they don't leave their back doors open at night, by the way, anyway, nor does anybody. So open borders are a way of reducing wages. I mean, we can have movement, of course we have to have movement, but we have to have not in a way which reduces people's rights at the border they're crossing into, i.e. wage rights and workers' rights, organisation rights, because all of these imported workers, generally speaking, are used to smash up trade union organisation. So, see, all those things together are just a raft. There's plenty of other stuff. You just name some false narrative, spies from Russia or whatever. They use all these things together to weaken the resistance to globalised international super exploitation.
Absolutely. Let's just see what the useful idiot says here. Bucks County Council leader Martin Tett said, "It's really positive news that the government is minded to support our proposals for a single unitary council, as if it's them. You know, they've been told what to do and they're going to do it. That's all it is. So it's positive news that they're going to support our proposals. It's us for a unitary council. So, you know, the new council will simplify the current local government setup by making it unaccountable, of course. Yes.
Yeah.
Save many millions of pounds to plough back into frontline service. Really? Really?
Like the Aylesbury estate, they destroyed community centres and now say they're doing deals with developers in order to get money to build community centres. I mean, it's utter bullshit. Even today I got a phone call from somebody who was not allowed to use the tenants' hall on the Aylesbury estate. No reason given. The hall could be used, but the council now controls it, not the tenants, and they do not want the organisation of the community to do anything.
Of course not, because they want to bring people outside in.
But see,
control the narrative.
this merging of councils, I should think, is really about making larger scale operations so they can bring in big super developments, rather like the Old Kent Road Opportunity Zone, say. This is a really big thing, right? It's 5 times the Haygate death and destruction. And I think they would like to do even bigger things on a bigger scale, involving many councils simultaneously, which would completely disempower local opposition, because people would be bemused by the size of what they were facing, and hopefully would give up. Now, of course, my view is you just organise on a bigger scale to deal with these things, but the powers that be have an agenda, and we have to break it.
Well, it's globalisation and all these cliches that we've heard, but we actually put it in the framework where it's come from, which is the stuff that we've talked about in this show and many others. And these useful idiots at a local level aren't making any decisions. They don't even really know where it's coming from, and because they've got their noses in the trough, they don't really care. and they want to enable services to be provided for residents at a truly local level. So you get 5 councils merging into one, right? But that makes more local, doesn't it?
Okay.
You know, it does though, Piers. You know, you've got to start thinking bigger. You know, you're not thinking big enough. You know, this is a...
Go local.
You've got to be positive.
Stay in the EU.
Yeah, think global, act local. You know, we know there's a widespread support. We know, you see, change agents speak. We know. So yeah, okay. So you've not consulted anybody, but you know.
Yeah, but they ask people questions like, "Do you believe in good things?" And if they say yes, that's taken as agreement.
Oh, the fire alarms have gone off in Windows towers, ladies and gentlemen. Or is it Piers Corbyn's phone? I don't know. We know there is a widespread support for these proposals. And we will continue talking with residents. Really? No, you won't. You liar. I'm calling you out now. You may pontificate towards people, but don't lie, please, you useful idiot. And a wide range of organisations, wide range of your organisations, you know, a wide range of your chosen organisations, your stakeholders across the country, to ensure the new council benefits from their important expertise as things develop. I'd encourage as many people as possible to let the government know their views. Really? I think that might have been a mistake. Together we can make a single unitary council happen. I mean, see, these people...
Did anyone ask for it?
Well, apparently not, but they're just telling you it's a good idea and that it's going to bring things more local, you see. It's going to make things smaller. So you make things bigger and then they become smaller. A single unitary council happen, which will not only improve residents' lives now, but crucially will create a Buckinghamshire that is fit and thriving for the future. Now, you can tell this idiot, useful idiot, hasn't written that himself, because it's just corporate nonsense, rubbish, Agenda 21 speak, yeah? However, leaders of all 4 district councils issued a statement on their disappointment and plan to keep up the fight. So
Well,
there you go.
So
Wait a minute. So in other words, he's said all that, right? And none of it's true. So in the next line they say it's not true. However, leaders of all 4 district councils issued a statement on their disappointment and plan to keep up the fight against it, right? So they say, oh no, we've all agreed on it, nothing to see here, move on, but apart from the fact that, nobody agrees apart from me, I'm the useful idiot change agent, but I'm making a public statement here. It's on behalf of the community. You know the community, you know that thing that's 5 councils in one now, and it's getting bigger. It's bigger. It's a global agenda implemented at a local level. What could possibly go wrong? Road humps. That's always a swear word. It was a swear word. Sorry.
Right. Yeah.
It's stated, while we are extremely disappointed, the minded to decision is not set in stone, and as the process allows, we will be making the strongest possible representations to the Secretary of State that this decision is not the right one. Well, there you go. So they were fighting.
How did it come
about?
I'm a bit bemused about what.
Well, it was thrown on them all together.
Yeah, but did they do focus groups and tell people what they wanted to hear, and then join the 5 councils?
Well, it doesn't sound like it. I'd like to know if people in Buckinghamshire what actually happened.
Because if the council leaders already disagreed, I'm a bit amazed that it's got this far.
Well, we bring in our own people, Piers, and we have consultations. And those consultations seem to be telling us a different story than what these minority of people are saying.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think council leaders necessarily represent anything apart from themselves, but it's a bit curious. The council leaders are really against it, whereas he says the community wants it.
That was the whole point of my preface.
Indeed it was, I know, but I'm just... I'm being as bemused as a listener.
Well, it's great actually, isn't it? Because we don't believe that this decision is in the best interest of our local residents, businesses, community groups, real ones, not the fake ones, parish councils, and
I would
various other
suggest
stakeholders.
what they should do is have a ballot on the matter. Take the whole 5 regions and have a great big mini referendum on whether we're going to be in the Buckinghamshire Union or not, whatever they're going to call it, you know. And I bet people would vote no, because they can see local accountability is going to be trashed by this, which is what it's all about.
The unitary council, you say?
The same purpose as the European Union. It's the same type of stuff.
Okay, so let's go to Oxfordshire now. Oxfordshire County Council has recently released proposals to merge Oxfordshire's two-tier local government system, which currently consists of 5 district councils and 1 county council, into a single council body or unitary authority. Now, this is what I don't get, Piers, right?
Mm-hmm.
That it's the same language they use all over the country, and for some reason these useful idiot councillors think it's particular to them. Why do they keep doing this?
Yeah. No, that is true, and those of us who point out, look, this is happening everywhere else, we get described as conspiracy theorists. All I can say is, look, there's an agenda. A government has an agenda. Local government associations have an agenda, and the agenda's here. If you want to call that a conspiracy, fine. But when the word conspiracy comes up, it's from someone who hasn't got an argument against what you're saying. So they just use that as like another swear word. It means you're xenophobic, a climate denier, a racist, an anti-Semite, or you're a conspiracy theorist.
Well, it could be a fascist or a Nazi.
Or you could be a fascist. Or, well, it was pointed out at the Merthyr Rising Festival there's now 3 sort of isms which are used. They put race, sex and science.
Oh yes.
Are used as the kind of 3. And anything they want to attack you with will flow out of one of those, race, sex or science.
Yeah, you're one of those people who thinks that Elvis's brain is on the moon. I've heard about people like you.
Well, it might be. Has anyone been there to check?
Well, I don't know. We need to debate on this a bit more, I think. We were going to have a debate on the moon, weren't we?
We were.
And
on the moon, no.
But
we weren't going to be on the moon. No,
the building we were going to have the debate about the moon landings in got knocked down and turned into flats.
It did. It did. The bailiffs came the day before we expected, so we couldn't have the debate, I recall, was what happened.
That's absolutely right. Well, here we go. Anyway, the unitary authority has gone to Oxfordshire. So it's gone from Buckinghamshire to Oxfordshire. And it's getting all over the country, actually. Because
well, they probably can't. Look, they got the same. So it's cut and paste job with this. You know, you've got the document and you change Buckinghamshire to Oxfordshire and 5 to 6.
This is what I've been saying for years, Piers, but nobody believed me.
Well, they should just go on the website and have a look.
It'd be easy, wouldn't it? The key changes in the proposal are reducing the number of councillors from 282 to between 100 and 120.
Oh, I
so
see.
Does that mean more or less accountability, in your opinion?
Well, it means that there's less accountability. I mean, obviously, there must be a limit to how many councillors you could have, but on the other hand, you know, you're halving them. I mean, as it is, councillors always claim they're too busy to represent people effectively when there are problems, and the local authorities keep councillors busy at endless stupid meetings in the town hall. I recall these things when I was a councillor, that 90% of what you do in the town hall is a waste of time, but it's to keep you off the streets. Because if you as a councillor are on the streets, you start finding out about what is really going on and going wrong. And that's the last thing they want councillors to do. Yes, councillor, no councillor, 3 bags full, councillor, come to a meeting, councillor.
But Piers, this is called joined up strategic plan. It's a joined up strategic plan, you see, for the country. For the county, actually the country really, to align housing, jobs and infrastructure planning. Now this is where it starts to get really sinister, because what this means is basically surveillance of everything and no rights whatsoever. That's it. That's what they're actually doing here, ending confusing divisions of responsibilities. No, it means ending responsibilities by having single points of contact. In other words, so you've got one call centre with people who don't know what they're doing, don't know what they're talking about. So, oh, your housing associations, yes, we've all merged now, so nobody's liable. Oh, but my ceiling's fallen in. Oh, I'll have to put you through. Yes, who are you with? Oh, right, okay, yeah. And that's the way it goes.
Yeah,
so we'll
exactly right. You sound as if you've listened to these calls quite a lot. But they are. Those call centres are, I don't think they're popular anywhere, because they're full of people who are ill-informed. They're doing their best to kind of help whoever answers, ask them questions, but they end up just shoving people into places where no one else answers, or they're going to be called back. And it's, you know, really tedious. All I want is the councillors to do their job.
Yes, it says here. Now this is pretty sickening. Joined up strategic plan for the county to align housing, jobs and infrastructure planning. Okay, total unaccountability. Apparently this is needed to deliver badly needed housing, which, however, avoids opportunist development without the necessary infrastructure. So wait a minute. So there's nothing wrong then with opportunist development, but what they need to do is make sure that the infrastructure's there. Well, actually, that's not what happens. The infrastructure is never in place in these new developments, and we're hearing this from all over the country. So in other words, you spend all of your time, if you're not cycling, in a traffic jam, and you can't get to a doctor, and then you go, wait a minute, where are all the schools and all this sort of thing? This is what happens in these places. What they're doing is I've noticed it everywhere, and it's interesting the way it goes, because in some of these areas they're obviously being designated to be a bit more elite, because they're building these places like eco houses, which have got a little pond. So you've got a load of houses around a little pond. Now these are going to be the sort of Agenda 21 gated places of the future, and when you look at where they are, you think, well, nobody wanted to live there before, but this is what's being done. This is the part of the depopulation of the countryside thing. In other words, only the people with lots of money are going to be able to see a bit of greenery. Oh, wait a minute, you've got a bit of greenery, haven't you? It's called your local community hub, you know, which has got a patch of grass outside it. But some devolution of power to district geographies, it says here, will be permitted. Oh, it's nice of them, isn't it?
Permitted. Well, one would hope it's there already.
5 area executive boards consisting of unitary councillors. Oh, there's a new word, unitary councillors.
It's religious, isn't it?
Well, it's one world, you see.
It's the Father, Son and the Holy Ghost all combined. This is the Holy Ghost, maybe.
Yeah, one world, one love. Let's get together and feel all right. Unitary councillors from the 5 former district councils will hold power over local planning.
Power over local planning.
There you go.
Perhaps this is the key to what's going on.
Yes, if developments are below 200 homes, 5 will hold power over local unitary councillors.
Well, only if it's a small development. If it's a big development, they have no power. Is that what it
Well,
means?
what they're trying to do is make it as though they are accountable in some way. Consisting of unitary councillors from the 5 former district councils will hold power over local planning if developments are below 200 homes.
Okay.
So, okay, if there's thousands of them, then no one cares.
That's right. That's
Yeah.
right. Well, yeah, I think the way that is written is what it means is that the powers are going to be taken away if it's a big development, which raises the issue of the Elephant and Castle,
Yes.
where the Elephant and Castle plan is being put forward by Delancey, a offshore thieving operation, who want to destroy the whole local community and build super duper luxury flats, many of which will be kept empty for land grab, speculation and money laundering. But the local councillors in 3 of the wards have all revolted and said, no, we don't want this. And after the council elections, there's been certain wobbles inside the Labour group which suggests there will be continuing opposition to this. However, I can see with the type of new structures you're talking about there, these sort of councillors will just get completely ignored, because they'll be told, look, hang on, Delancey is building 979 units. I'm sorry guys, that means you've got no say on this.
Exactly.
So it looks like to me it is a way of bypassing local opposition, because these councillors would have gone ahead but for the community, the actual community fighting back and having big demonstrations and mini riots outside the town hall and so forth. And
which is why they control the narrative.
They responded, yeah.
They control the narrative locally because they take out the people. That's what Delphi technique's all about at those meetings. You were identified as a troublemaker straight away, and that went in the castle, weren't you? Well, no, you weren't making trouble. What you were doing is bringing something troublesome to the table, like accountability.
I was bringing trouble. I wasn't making it. Yes. You can't make trouble where no trouble exists. Or can you?
Well, I don't know. But the thing is that they saw it as trouble. You see, because when I asked them, who do I get in touch with? They go, oh, our team leader. And I spoke to the team leader, and she said, oh, I was involved in Agenda 21 locally. What a surprise, eh? What a surprise. So in other words, they're rolling that thing out, and the people there were facilitators. So they split us up all into groups of 12, making our little covens all around the place. Oh yes, the Last Supper. And And we didn't even get any supper, did we? Really, it was rubbish.
No, there was council tea, which usually goes bitter after a short time.
Well, I suppose you're right. It wasn't a happy experience, was it? And I remember it very well because I said to the
We're talking about the Old Kent Road,
which is an area of southeast London
Yeah,
in
yeah.
the UK for our international listener.
It's the Old Kent Road Opportunity Zone, where some tenants associations or other estates are trying to opt out of it. And during the election, we announced, some of us, we wanted to opt out of it. Would this be allowed? We asked the council leader. And at the hustings, where he was being quizzed, he answered every question in some sort of form, except for that one, which he studiously ignored.
Yes.
So
And also,
we're going to be opportunity zoned without being asked.
well, this is
even though we
another
don't
thing.
want
Yeah,
to be.
the business opportunity. They call it the business opportunity thing as well, and nobody really knew what that was locally as far as business people were concerned because they weren't consulted about anything, and that was proved in the meeting. There was a fella there whose family had been there since 1947. They said, "Oh yes, we'll consult with all the local businesses," and he said, "Well, I wasn't consulted." "Oh dear, we've missed you out." He said, "No, you haven't. You've missed all the businesses in the borough out. There's 800 here as well. You haven't consulted either." So that was it, wasn't it? It was, well, that's just typical of what goes on. So what they're doing is they're taking away all input locally. You have no input locally now whatsoever. When I moved out of Waltham Forest, they told me there'd be 1,000 new flats on my doorstep in a very built-up area. I said no thanks, and I've moved now. And this is happening everywhere. It's just well, it's the unitary planetary council, really, isn't it? You know, that's what we're talking about here. And which is what? Oh, UN Habitat comes out every 2 years, and they're telling you now that 50% of people are living in cities worldwide. And
Well, is this meant to be good or bad? What are they?
well, they're saying it's great. They're saying it's a great
okay.
thing because
Okay.
it's all about the economy. Well, wait a minute. If you push everybody into cities, then that means that all of the smaller places are no longer functioning. And they're not, because they're taking all the cash machines out. It's harder to get anywhere. What they're doing with the Agenda 21 plans is the Wildlands Project. Look at the Wildlands Project. They had in Waltham Forest the Wetlands Project. What they're going to do? Oh, they built entrances onto Hackney marshes. Have you ever heard of such a thing? Because I don't think there was entrances on there before. What they mean is they're closing them off because they're putting gates up. This is the sort of way they sell it. They sell it as a benefit, you see. It's like the...
Oh, so building an entrance is closing down
That's
an
right.
entrance.
That's closing down some open land.
1984 was some time ago.
Exactly. And the Newspeak of 1984 is being implemented at a local level.
Of course.
That's all they're doing. But apparently it's all billed as necessary, you see, in response to austerity. In future, government expects councils to self-fund entirely, pretty much via council tax and business rates alone. Well, business rates put businesses out of business. That's what they're there to do.
And do we need to self-fund gates which weren't there before to prevent us going to where we could go before?
We have to contribute, Piers. You know, everyone's got to contribute. This just doesn't happen overnight, you know. I mean, you know, people have to take responsibility for their own community. But the cynic in me feels that this is really all about the Tory-led council trying to grab more power, as Oxford City is solidly Labour voting and the rest of the county is Tory.
Okay.
I don't think it's anything to do with that. Is there any right left? Are there any rights left?
Oh,
You
right.
know,
Yeah,
do you know what I mean?
yeah,
Both have
yeah,
different
yeah.
priorities. I don't think it matters now. Apparently Wiltshire, Durham and Cornwall all fairly recently became unitary. Is anyone who lives in one of these council service areas able to comment on the extent to which the new
What we should
arrangements
do,
have
we
been
should
an
ask
improvement?
people to feedback.
Please
on
tell
that.
us.
Were they asked what was going on? Were they told what the benefits would be? Were they given a choice? Do they feel that accountability is going to go up or down as a consequence? We'd just like to know what people are finding in practical terms.
Well, Piers, as our local useful idiot says, survey after survey suggests.
Well, survey after survey suggests, but I can tell you, survey after survey on the Aylesbury estate, the Cressingham Gardens and Alton Estates show that what the councils are doing is not what people want.
Exactly, as was found out in our video where you were there and you were accused of being some kind of radical because you stood up with everybody else in the room and told the council to leave. Now, isn't this funny? That when people scream at them to leave, they just sit there.
They do.
And when people say, come back, we want to talk to you, they leave. It's kind of reversal.
Yeah.
It's a strange reversal of tactics that they use. Dorset, West Dorset District Council, North Dorset District Council and Weymouth and Portland Borough Council share one chief executive and senior management team. What could possibly go wrong there?
Well, I don't know. I wonder what'll happen to Chesil Beach.
That's for
being endorsed.
That's for you to know and me to find out. A single workforce is to be created for the councils, but it is not clear how many job losses there will be.
Right, so there'll be job losses anyway. See, that workforce, I'd like to know, is it going to be in-house or is it going to be subcontracting? Are they bringing some European Union tax dodging operation or an American tax dodging operation that's using so-called, open border European free trade rules to impose cheap labour on us? I don't know.
Well, let's have a look.
When are we going to talk about the weather, by the way?
Well, we're going to talk about the weather very soon, actually. I was just going to bring it up, Piers, but you had to mention it, didn't you? Now,
okay, Captain.
Here we go. It come up straight away. And guess what came up when I put that in? The Dorset, basically, unitary thingy. It says here, we get our Dorset.
All right.
It's ours, you see, Piers.
Apparently.
But it's the Dorset Sustainability and Transformation Plan. So that this bringing together of councils is nothing to do with Agenda 21, is it? Because this is an Agenda 21.
See, they're
document.
just good words, aren't they? They're holier than thou words to justify everything. We're going to destroy the north of England in the name of saving the planet. We're going to destroy your rights in Dorset in the name of... Can you read that again? Sustainable... What is it? Green... God.
Well,
anyway, the thing is...
It's the document... This document provides additional information to support... Oh, yes, the propaganda arm. Our Dorset. Our Dorset.
Oh, yeah, and
the
our
Sustainability and Transformation Plan for Dorset.
Right.
In actual fact, people, this is truly scary because everything that you think is controlled locally is now not controlled locally. It's being enforced by useful idiots who are doing it on the back of something that most people don't even know exists.
Yeah.
Leading and working differently. It's got a pyramid there. 1, acute network of services. 2, integrated community services. And tier 1 is prevention at scale. Right, now let's just see the rubbish they put, because all of these documents are the same, right? Transforming our workforce and leadership is one of 2 fundamental enabling programs of work that are essential if we are to realise our ambitions for our prevention at scale, integrated community services and 1 acute network program.
I don't know what it means. Look, this stuff is it's a word salad of good sounding 1984 type sound bites, most of which means the opposite for what they say. And if you choose to oppose any of these things or the sub things, you'll be given a label from the false narratives. As I said, you'll be racist, sexist, anti-Semitic, a denier of something, a xenophobe, anti-democratic, not prepared to progress.
You just don't like change, Piers. Listen to this. This is the most important thing.
But
governance and delivery.
As I said at Murphy Tidfield, if you oppose, you'll be given a label. I said, read the label.
Exactly. Well, look at the facts would be handy, wouldn't it?
Yes.
Governance and delivery. We are proud of our track record. What You're proud of your track record. Okay, so you've just formed this multi-conglomerate of useful idiots and got rid of most of the people who can make decisions, and you're proud of your track record of working together, you see, across organisational boundaries, which means basically that we don't listen to anybody. Yeah, that's what that means, across organisational boundaries, to deliver change. In other words, we deliver what you never voted for, and we say you don't like change because you oppose us.
That's right. And I'm afraid we've asked the people next door, and they think this, so you can't think that.
Well, Piers, however, we have not previously delivered system changes of the scale set out in this plan.
Not.
In other words, because it's not from you. It's the Global Action Plan implemented locally.
Indeed.
Global.
Okay. Local. Oh, local.
I think we should talk about the weather, Piers.
We should, yeah. So what do you want to say?
Well, what do you want to say? I'd just say it's been a nice day, you know. My rant's over with.
It has been a nice day. Right, it was a very warm May. It wasn't true it was the warmest May ever, except if you use the BBC or, well, I'm not sure whose records they were using, but they had records going back to 1906 and said it was the warmest May in those records. However, bear in mind that the last 10 years of records have been manipulated by half a degree, so even on their own scales it probably was not the warmest. If you look at more reliable data, the warmest in the past was in 1833, not now, and 1992 was in all probability warmer. The interesting thing about this May for us in Weather Action was we made some mistakes in the sort of early midish part of May where it was much warmer than we thought, and we've worked out why that was now. The end of May was very warm, like we said, and excellently followed our forecast in Britain and Europe, and also the ones in US of A. And it broke down into big thunderstorms, and these big thunderstorms coincided with one of our red weather periods, an R4 period, where there was also an Earth-facing coronal hole. That means a hole in the solar corona, out of which flowed very, very fast electrons and other stuff. But most the fastest ones were fast electrons. So instead of going at 1,000,000 miles an hour, the solar wind would be going at least twice or possibly even 10 times that speed. And this has impacts on the world's weather and makes for more geomagnetic activity, and that is shown by the geomagnetic data, and more intense thunderstorms, giant hailstorms, and so forth. And there was a lot of those in this period, the 27th or 28th of May until June the 1st. So we've just moved into a quieter period where, although there may be thunderstorms, they will not be so intense, and the hail will not be so devastating as some which have destroyed the whole year's wine crop in Bordeaux, for example, and other parts of France, where we did warn years ago there will be more hail under mini ice age conditions, and people who think they're going to make money by switching to vines are in cloud cuckoo land, and they're being tricked, and now they have been tricked. Other things going on?
Yep.
We've got a new forecast out for June under our new solar lunar action technique 15A, and this has got a very interesting thing in. The American one says that for the last period in June, around about the 29th, give or take a day or so, there will be a new tropical storm hitting the Gulf Coast, quite likely to hit New Orleans or near there. Now, we're about 65% sure of the kind of detail of this, but I would say 85% sure there will be a Gulf tropical storm hitting land, on June the 29th, give or take a few days. So watch this space. No one has said this far ahead from the other side, and they won't say anything until a week or so ahead. So look out for this, because this is quite a significant thing we're saying, and it will cause damage in New Orleans. Whether they will prepare for it, I do not know, but I would advise that they do prepare for it, because New Orleans is very, very vulnerable to things, and we would expect this storm to be something like Hurricane Level 2, which is quite capable of causing damage.
Sounds like it.
Indeed.
Yes, well that's...
And you heard it first on Windows on the World, from the top of Windows Tower here in London.
That's right, we're at the top of Windows Tower, and it's been, well, quite a nice June day. We've not really had much good weather so far this year, have we? It's been very cold.
No, it's been very cold. It was a very late and mostly cold spring, apart from May, you see, quite interesting, but big flip-flops. And this is to do with the wild jet stream, as I said recently on some radio shows. It means that the north-southward motion of the jet stream, which is the upper air motion, which separates the generally colder northern parts, this is in the northern hemisphere, from the southern parts which are colder, that has got wild changes in it, and as the boundaries move across, we get switches from very warm to very cold. So although the very warm in Britain happened around the 26th, 27th and so forth, 28th of May, there was very cold at the same time in mid-Atlantic, and then people have experienced these flip-flops. The BBC only report on the excessive warmth, and they leave out the excessive cold. For example, the 28th of February this year, because you can get daily data on some reasonable accurate measurements or estimates, was the coldest 28th of February since 1785. So if you look for these extremes, you'll find that the coldest ones are actually more extreme than these warmest ones, and the colder periods are generally longer than the warm periods. So we've had a warm May, but in the spring, March and April were cold. Under real data, they have got the half a degree of fraud, of course, but if you look at satellite data, that actually shows that world temperatures are now declining.
Yes, I think most people would be very aware of that, and the fact that they've told us over the past couple of years that this is the warmest whatever month ever. I mean, it's totally ridiculous. I mean, nobody would believe that if they've lived more than 30 years. Surely it doesn't make any sense.
No, they don't. The actual belief now on man-made climate change is plummeting, which was reflected by the feedback I had in Murphy Rising. But also it's by the fact that, well, Donald Trump, whatever you may say about any of his policies or not policies, you know, to be completely fair, he has confronted the opportunist liars and pseudoscientists in climate and has defeated them in America.
Yes, but the extreme left now, or what they call the extreme left, has to focus on trivia at all times, you see.
Well,
so the fact that he's
Trump
getting rid of
has done
statues...
the world a service to actually just say when something isn't true on climate, he's pointed out it isn't true. And, you know, this is severely undermining the ideological base of the globalists from Wall Street. Because remember, although Donald Trump has got loads of money, he's got really a trivial amount compared with the big operations on Wall Street. You know, they regard him as a nuisance, and of course he is a nuisance to them. They regard the working class as an even bigger nuisance, but it's wrong to describe Trump as just being like another Wall Street person. He's not. He's something different, which they're upset by.
Exactly. This is the thing. It's not exactly what they want, and if they don't get exactly what they want, they throw the toys everywhere, which means ad hominems for everybody.
Of course. Yes,
unless you join in with the rhetoric of the extremists. Yes, okay, let's make it a big conspiracy theory and blame George Soros. You know, I mean, how ridiculous is that? He's trying to subvert the Brexit vote, and it's a conspiracy theory that he's actually got anything to do with global politics, if you read The Guardian.
Yeah, of course. But he's spending loads of money on NGOs all over the place. I mean, in Hungary, they had to expel a number of NGOs because they were just funded by George Soros. And NGO being non-government organisation, which is supposed to be people friendly. Well, you know, hang on, look, if they're funded by George Soros, are they going to do what George Soros says or what somebody they meet in the street?
Should call them WGOs. world government organisations. You know, which is ridiculous.
Or SGOs,
Yeah.
Soros government organisations.
So you've got everything's backwards, isn't it? So we've got community organisers who destroy the community, whatever that means. It used to mean something in the probably the Middle Ages. You know, I don't really know what it means anymore. Have you got any definition of modern community, Piers, to finish the show off?
Well, I would say a proper modern community.
Yes, let's go for what
a
we
real
should
one,
be.
A real one would be like, take a housing estate, which could be a council estate, it could be a private estate, but it's where the people meet together in a democratic way, decide what they want, and tell the council or whatever authority there is what they want, and have a right to be heard. And if they want to have a ballot for the whole area on something, they should have it. I mean, as the Labour Party is now saying. And the councils are busy dodging the ballot bullet, as I said. And there's going to be countless excuses raised to not have ballots. One of which is going to be planning transport infrastructure. If there's a planning transport infrastructure planning application, you don't have to ballot on it because it's needed. Needed for who? For a developer. So look, watch that space, be very careful, demand accountability, ballots.
Stay under the radar and organise. That's my advice for this week and every week. See you next week on Windows on the World. Good night. Thanks for listening.
Thank you.